Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to my show, High Road to Humanity. In every episode, I tell you powerful true stories filled with great wisdom that you can use in your own life as you strive for a higher road to travel. My featured guests will have their own unique stories to tell that enlighten your mind and your soul. So kick back, relax, and learn the secret to success when you take the high road.
First touch, strong connection, it lays deep in your soul.
Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to High Road to Humanity. And I have a wonderful guest. Stase Michaels is back with us, and welcome back to High Road to Humanity, Stase.
How wonderful to be here today.
I am so thrilled you're here. She's joining us from Canada, and we're going to be talking about this book that she's written. It's really phenomenal. It's called Justice Plays Roulette. And if you're watching me on YouTube, which hopefully you are, you're seeing the book, and it's fabulous. This is a murder bride, 4 confessions, and a jailed cop. It is amazing. And I have to say, it's very intriguing. As a reader, I was like, oh, this is great. What's going to happen next? So you're a very good writer when it comes to a mystery, I have to say. But this is a true story.
That's the hard part. I kind of jokingly say it's as if you're driving by a car crash and your heart is kind of torn apart, but you can't help but watch. It's kind of, you're wondering what's happening. You're wondering if everyone will be okay, who the people are. And I just want to tell you, it's a long book, but it's because it's kind of 2 stories in one. And one story is about this young, beautiful girl who is a teenager named Michelle. And just imagine this. This is one of the stories. The 2 are intertwined. Suppose you had a teenage daughter. She's the best daughter you could probably ever want to have. She's great personality. She's wonderful in school. She's great with her friends. She's a great daughter. And in high school, she meets her high school sweetheart, and they're dating, through high school.
Right.
And at the end of high school, he joins the Navy, and after his training, he gets posted to another city. So of course, they're young, they're in love, they're like 18 years old, and she just finds it too hard to be away. So they promise their parents they'll wait for a year to get married, but then she can't stand it and she moves to the city where he is. And this is just the beginning of the story, so I'm not really giving the plot away.
Right.
So then, of course, what happens with young love, without telling their parents, she moves in with him. And secretly, they elope and they get married.
Okay.
So they're secretly married and she's living with him. And then just a few months later, we're talking months after she moves, you're the mom and you're the parent. And you get this phone call that you never want to get. And there's a police officer telling you that your child, your only daughter, has been brutally murdered. Now that's just rips your heart out from the start. So half of the story is about the story of Michelle and, her love affair and her love of her life that she marries, and then how it comes to that. Now, the other half of the story is the story of this detective.
Right.
His name is Ford.
Yeah.
And he's becomes the lead homicide detective. At first, another detective is doing the case. Then that detective leaves and he takes over the case, but it's already been kind of botched. So it's kind of starting with a few knots to begin with. And he's considered one of the best homicide detectives in his whole area, and he's very well known. And he has this incredible track record. He solves like 90% of the cases that he's worked on for 20 years. So he gets the case, and the rest of the book is how he investigates the murder, how there come to be 4 confessions of 4 different people who are all friends. how it looks like a gang rape and murder. And then how all of that begins to unravel in so many different ways over years.
Yeah, I
And
was going to say, let me
yeah,
just stop you for a second and preface for the
yeah,
audience. This takes place in Norfolk, Virginia, correct? The
yes,
whole deal. And it is a true story. And from the book starts in the 80s and it doesn't end until the 2018 in December.
that's that's right. Yeah, so you start with the actual background in order to
Yeah.
understand what happens with the detective in the later years, 30 and 40 years later, you kind of have to get just a little bit of his background in his early years. So
Yeah.
that's how the book starts out. It kind of sets the background of who this detective is, what he's really like, how he starts off as this very humble patrol officer who people think is just kind of a bit of a joke and then becomes one of the best homicide detectives around.
That's interesting.
So all of that is part of the story and it's important because later when you see what happens, it's important to see who he was
So he
and who,
was, yeah.
yeah.
Now, I want to rewind a little bit also. You are, and I didn't read your bio, you've been on the show before, but you actually, let me just kind of give a little, you've written 8 books on dreams, a little bit of dreams and nightmares, the dark side of dreams and dreamings. They're current bestsellers. You've lived in Virginia, now you're in Toronto, but you helped the police with this case.
Well, I don't know that I would say that I helped the police with the case. This is what the background is. I was working at that police department.
Okay.
So in the kind of second half of the story, where the investigation is taking place and things that are going on with this detective, um, kind of I know all of these characters.
Right.
It's fiction, but it's I was also there seeing firsthand a lot of what was going on. So I know
Right.
the background of not only the investigation, but there's a lot about police departments and the police that I had no idea before I started to work at a police department. I was an analyst.
Okay. I wondered. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So
All
I
right.
you're considered a civilian,
Okay.
which is kind of like 2 steps down.
When you're in the police department, right? Okay. So
Yeah,
you're in Virginia and you
yeah,
take this position as an analyst.
that's right. That's right.
Okay.
And it was pretty amazing because here I was as a Canadian, but I lived in the US for almost 30 years. But I knew nothing about guns and the police because in Canada, guns are not a big thing or didn't used to be.
Right.
So here
We're
I
going to
am.
talk about that today too.
This
But
is this is
yeah.
all part of the amazing part of what I learned, and which is actually part of the story.
Yeah.
Learning all of these details you don't really understand and know about police departments and how it works for police officers.
Right.
And many of them, the hardships that they go through just being a police officer.
Mhm.
So again, a lot of questions, a lot of things that I learned, but it was kind of funny because here I was, right, I was writing a lot of policy and working with the lawyers. And one of the first things that I learned in a police department was that police officers are governed by all these rules and regulations about everything, what they wear, how they investigate a case, how they hold firearms. So here I was, because of my writing background, and fortunately, being a skilled writer, it was a position that I really liked. As an analyst, I got to analyze things, but also to write their policy. So here I was writing, let's say, when they acquired tasers, writing a policy on tasers. And what did I know about firearms? So I would attend the trainings.
Okay.
So when I first got there, to help me understand police and police departments, I got to go to the police academy
Oh, wow.
to a certain extent. I mean, I wasn't taking the judo classes and the wrestling and whatever.
Mhm.
You draw a certain line, but
Wow.
but I sat in on a lot and watched them train, and that was pretty amazing. And that also became a little bit of the story because 2 people that I often sat beside became a little bit part of that story that's, I'm not going to mention, no spoilers
Yeah,
alerts
you don't
here.
want to give it away.
But, but one of them was this lovely young Black officer, in his
Right.
early 20s,
Yeah.
and
Joe,
and also a friend of his,
is that right?
who later, who was a young woman police
Uh-huh.
officer,
Yeah.
who later it turned out was the daughter, and you don't know because married names are different, who turned out to be the daughter of the man who did a lot of my landscaping in my home in Virginia. So
Okay.
all these ties, and this young man, he heard that I had written, this book on dreams and books on dreams. So he was so interested. I gave him a copy of my book, and he kept telling me that he kept having this dream about being killed by friendly fire, another police officer. And he told me this several times, at least 3 times. And, and we talked about it. We talked about, well, it's always possible, although most dreams are symbolic. Now, what's interesting here is that years later, and we're talking maybe 7 or 8 years later, that actually did happen. He was killed accidentally by another police officer, but the circumstance also somewhat relates to this story that I wrote too. So that part I won't kind of unravel here, but for sure it was an accident by a police officer. But there were also some really unanswered questions about who was where and what and how he got to be in that space, that crowd, where he did get a bullet accidentally, where he shouldn't have been there that day. So there were a lot of questions. So a lot of these kinds of side stories and insights into a police department that I would never have known or been able to write as a detective story.
Right. Well, you say the book reveals the dark secrets of how police operate.
Yeah, yeah. One of the misconceptions or myths for me was, everyone talks about this thin blue line, how officers really support each other and help each other. And part of that is very true
Okay.
to the outside world, So if you attack a police officer, they will kind of close ranks and try to help each other and support each other.
Like in New
How-
York, where they just all banded together and there were thousands who banded together. And that was
Exactly.
amazing to see that, you know what I'm talking about? That just happened like a month ago,
Exactly. And
Yeah.
and I know anytime a police officer gets killed and there's, this public funeral, and I went to several of them, and I was weeping myself because you get to see, how dedicated these people are. But
Right.
at the same time, the other side of the coin is
Right.
internally within the police department, that's actually not so true.
Right.
It's more like this medieval little cliques of fiefdoms, and captains or assistant chiefs can all have their kind of followers and their cliques, and yeah, on the surface they're kind of friendly, but behind the scenes there can be these epic rivalries and backstabbing and manipulations that go on. But well, may be true in any large company or group, or
Unfortunately. Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I was shocked at the kinds of things that I saw within the police department along those lines, but also saying that a lot of them are very dedicated and wonderful.
Right. Well, and so you got to see the inside scoop. And how long were you with them, with the police department?
Just almost 10 years.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
And you did a lot of work and you wrote a lot of their manuals on how to basically do different
Manuals,
things.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
All,
Do you
all
think
the,
you made a difference, Stase?
well, I think, I answered that question, Nancy, by saying I think we all make a difference.
Yeah.
When we truly believe in what we do and we truly care about other people, I
Mhm.
think we make a difference. Well, now, can you measure that? Probably not.
Okay.
Probably not. But I know that um, I stood up for trying to include policies that was helpful to everyone. And I brought a perspective of a lay person and a person from the outside as much as I could. But of
Yeah.
course, they're the ones who make the final decisions, and which is as it should be.
Mhm.
So you try to bring that, you try to bring caring and understanding. And it was kind of a joke because here I was, a vegetarian dream analyst
Right, in the police department.
in the police department who knew nothing about police or guns.
Yeah.
And and I used to bring this gallon water bottle of fresh water to kind of drink every day because I didn't like to always do coffee and their water taps didn't look like something I wanted to use.
Yeah.
So everybody used to laugh, but in the end, everyone was kind of doing that.
Oh my gosh, how funny. Well, yeah, and you even write about how they all have donuts and how somebody just sent over donuts and they don't have sprinkles and it's interesting because you talk about I loved how you began the book. I will just say this. She talks about these young guys and how they're just getting started and how they're so excited in their dreams and their aspirations to become a detective, and you have to be on the beat for so many years before you can even think about becoming a detective. And it was just interesting. And then the racial part you brought into it, also, which is true, which happens. There was a real tall Black man who really was not treated as fairly as he should have been because of his color.
I think, that I was living in the South, and this was a
Yeah,
police department in the South.
right.
And I think, if you go back 20 or 30 years, or 50 years, a lot of this might have been more open. And I think what has happened along the way through the years is there might still be
The
a lot of
prejudice.
the prejudices, the
Yeah,
racial threads, but
yeah.
it's kind of a bit more hidden now. People might be more polite. But I think for me, from what I could see, because I was friends with all of
Everybody. Yeah.
all of the officers. I didn't, care if it was black or white. In fact, I taught at Hampton University, which is a black college, for
Mhm,
5 years.
mhm.
So I didn't have a problem with that at all. But what it was also painful to see, though, that beneath the surface, there were still these prejudices. But from my understanding, I believe it comes from fear.
Right.
We fear that which we're not familiar with, what we don't understand. And if we all kind of had 3 or 10 or a dozen Black friends, not just people that we say hello to, but we invite to our homes and have dinner with, and we go bowling with, or whatever we do, or play tennis with,
Right.
that would disappear pretty quickly. And I think it's happening more among the young people.
Yes.
And that's I applaud that.
Yeah. And I've always been, I look at the soul. Of course, I'm a different kind of bird, but
Exactly.
I've never looked at it that way. But I guess I brought it up because it's the way you wrote it. You were honest. It was the sheer honesty of the story, I think, that really struck me, to be honest with you, Stase. I mean, you were brutally honest. You talked about the wives and how they felt. And a lot of these officers fooled around on their wives. And that's true. I've known people who've been married to police officers and
Uh,
divorced with 3 kids. And, it
yeah.
almost seems like a pattern, like it's almost a profile of the guy that goes in and thinks he's really hot or something like that. So, I mean, you talk about all that kind of stuff. You're honest, with everything that's gone on in our police departments, and I have to say our judicial system here in the United States, I know are you a dual citizen?
I was. Yes, I
But
was.
but
Yes.
now you're a Canadian citizen. Well, I
Yeah,
guess,
now I am Canadian. Yeah, for the reasons related more to my family. I'm helping some elderly
right.
members of the family. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess what I want to say is that, we've had so much disruption here in the United States about the police department. And here's what I think. I'll just throw out what I think, and I want you to tell me what you feel. I feel like generally people are good. And honestly, these guys are there to do a good job. And yes, egos get in the way and everybody wants to be on top and everybody wants to be in charge, but everybody can't. But I think, they were genuinely good. I know there are some corruption. There's always corruption in everything. And that's the sad part. And then, of course, I think the biggest part that I see corrupt is the government intervening into the police department to, let's say, accomplish their own goals. And so that's my take on this. What do you see?
Well, I agree with you. I think that my experience within that police department and others from other police departments that I had worked with and met, that I do believe that most people are honest and good and trying to do a good job. And that sometimes, even when they're trying to do that, things can fall between the cracks. And I agree with you that there are also some bad apples, who are there really for their own power and whatever other motives that kind of lead them down a different path that hurts people and hurts themselves in the long run. Now, in terms of the government interactions with police, that I remember, in work, because I worked within the administration levels, that was always a very thorny, difficult question because on the one hand, most police departments are financed, let's say by city, so there's city politics and there's government grants. So there has to be a whole lot of interactions. Now, in terms of the politics that go on, I think that changes in different years. Sometimes there seems to be like there's more going on that's interference, and other times there's less.
Whether or not it's an election year or not. Probably. Yeah.
Exactly. And who is getting elected and why? Because that I have seen, whether it's attorneys or whether it's politicians, they can kind of do politics and say one thing when they're kind of running, and then not do quite the same thing once they're in office. And
Right.
that becomes, part of our whole issue of us learning how to kind of sift what's true and what isn't, and who is going to be more honest and who is going to have more integrity with what they do. And
Right.
I think that same is true in politics,
Oh, yeah.
sadly,
Mhm.
and true everywhere and anywhere. But I do think we're kind of seeing the tide starting to turn where people are just demanding more integrity, more honesty.
More honesty. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just, as we're talking, I'm thinking, oh, they just need to restructure it so that the money, our taxes go right to that and not through the city, because it gets convoluted at that point. If it went directly to, the police department, if there was some way everybody, could just contribute in that respect in their town,
Well,
wouldn't
that's
that kill the middleman there, a
well,
little
it's
bit?
an interesting point. But then,
Yeah.
look at the other question too is
Yeah.
we talk about police accountability.
Who's going to hold them accountable?
Who's going to hold them accountable? And so far, one of the difficulties in getting rid of police officers who, let's say, you might know deserve the boot but don't get it, is because of the police unions can be very strong, and that can be a good thing.
Mhm.
However, it's not always a good thing in being able to weed out police, because
Right.
when something bad does happen, if they're only internally investigating and looking to see what happens, you never feel the trust that the investigation turned out, impartially, that people were impartial. So there's always that kind of seesaw. Okay, whether you give the money directly or not, how will you hold police officers accountable, police departments accountable? So we see sometimes things happen and certain officers are fired or criminal charges are brought against them, um, or people resign, but that's rare.
Yeah, but
And
it
usually it's the bottom person who gets the boot and not the person at the top who might deserve it more.
I deserve the boot. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you know, I just feel like they're protected. When somebody does do something wrong, let me back up. I think the officers are afraid to even do anything now because they're so concerned. I feel that intuitively, that the officers are walking around on eggshells now, because if they do something, then are they going to be in the media? Are they going to lose their job? Are they going to be prosecuted? I mean, that's really what it's come down to. And my fear, to be honest with you, my only fear about this whole thing is that this will continue, and I'd like to see it stop, because people won't want to become police officers any longer because of, being killed or being prosecuted or being persecuted or your family being persecuted. And that's what really worries me more than anything about the police departments in America right
I
now.
agree with you. I agree with you. And as a matter of fact, the statistics show that in the last year, huge numbers have actually quit, and getting new officers is harder than it's ever been. And I
Oh,
think
sure.
you're exactly right for those reasons. So, and this is why we have to rebuild that trust. So one of the things I do try to do in writing this book is I do show the dark undersides and underbelly of the things that do and can go wrong in a police department. But hopefully I also do show how so many really do try their best, and working within a very difficult system with so many restrictions. They not only have to fear walking on eggshells within the police department, but exactly as you say now, and working with the public, it's a whole new ballgame right now.
It's scary. Listen, I want to talk a little bit. I'm going to hold your book up again, you guys. This is what it looks like. It's a beautiful cover. It's Justice Plays Roulette. It is a fabulous story. To be honest with you, I'm going to take this when I'm, a day at the beach or when I'm gone on a trip, and I can just sit down and read this. This is the kind of book this is. Just so, curl up by the fire kind of deal. That's the kind of book this is. And it's intriguing, and you want to just keep reading. But I want to talk a little bit about what's happening where you are, only because I'm curious, just like I'm sure the audience is. We've watched so much go on with Trudeau and all of that. I've been so upset. I've been so proud of the truckers for standing up, but then so upset with, them trying to, freeze their bank accounts. And I just feel like they crossed the line there. But on the other hand, I feel like maybe some of us Americans should stand up right now too. So what do you feel about this whole thing, Stase? I'm curious.
Well, I'm kind of sharing the point of view of some fellow Canadians here, where, okay, the right to demonstrate is considered certainly a sacred right here. And they had, I think 2 or 3 weeks worth of it. So demonstrating is one thing, but paralyzing the city, paralyzing the border, disrupting other people's lives, not allowing people to do their other jobs, that people thought crossed the line. So now many people here think that he was a little bit too patient, even for allowing 3 weeks worth of that before they kind of lowered the boom and towed them away. Um, so that's one thing. Certainly demonstrate, if you believe in something, I
Stand up.
totally support
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But what if you were no longer allowed to do your broadcast for a month because someone else has a different point of view than you? Is that fair too? So I think it's about um, allowing the free expression, but not to the point of hurting other people at the same time in ways that truly do damage.
Right.
In Ottawa and at the borders, for example, there were restaurant owners, there were businesses that lost almost a month of business.
Wow.
Now, you
That's
know,
crazy. Yeah.
that's crazy too. It's demonstrating is okay, but okay, maybe a day or two where you're that disruptive, but
Well, and I'm going to rewind a little bit. The reason
Yeah.
they demonstrated is they just weren't happy with how things were going, and they were standing up and saying, and I feel that way here. We finally, where I'm at in New Mexico, we don't have to wear masks, but yet I went to the dentist yesterday, and this is the craziest thing in the world. So I'm just going to say it. So I go to the dentist, and there's a sign on the door, put your mask on. Although outside I don't have to, but inside I do. Okay. So I put the mask on to go in the door. And then the lady says, take your mask off. We're going to do x-rays. And so I take it off. And then she says, we're going to go down the hall, put it back on. And then I go down the hall and then I can take it back off. And it just goes on. And I'm thinking, and then at the very end of the whole deal, the lady says, who's cleaning my teeth, we have a system, she says, that was put in like 30 years ago when the doctor opened the office, and all this air is circulated so that all the fresh air comes in. And I'm thinking, then why are we doing this? This is crazy. So then I walk out of the office and I take off my mask and I go to the gas station to pump gas, and I go in and she doesn't have a mask and I don't have a mask and everything's good. This to me is nuts.
Well, a lot of people
It's just nuts.
And as for these truck drivers here in Canada, we laugh because like 89% of the truck drivers are vaccinated.
Yeah.
So protesting against the vaccinations here for truck drivers is ridiculous because they're all vaccinated to begin with.
Freedom.
And
It's freedom though, Stase. People want freedom.
well, they have the freedom not to wear their masks.
So you don't have to wear the mask in Canada anymore?
Yeah, the mask mandate is still in partially, as you say,
So how does it
outdoors.
work there? How does it work there? Tell me.
Well, outdoors, obviously, when there's fresh air and winds blowing, it's you don't have to. Indoors, it's still required. Most places are open for business, whether it's restaurants or whatever, sometimes at limited capacity so that there's still a little bit of distancing. And they're trying to follow the mandates of the doctors and the scientists. And the numbers of COVID the Omicron have gone way, way down here and everywhere in the US as well. So, it's looking like all of this is going to be lifted all very soon anyway.
Yeah.
But they're being extra cautious here. I personally don't mind being cautious because, a lot of people have died, worldwide.
Yeah. Well, no, but you and I have probably different feelings on this. I think this was a population decreasing thing, to be honest with you. I don't,
Well,
that's Nancy's feeling on it. but what do you think, Stace?
Well, if 10 times more people would have died, I don't know. As long as it's easy to say when it's not one of your family members.
No, I know. I hear you. I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
Fortunately, we've been lucky. We've been lucky.
Yeah, I've been lucky too. And I got it when it first came out, and it was a really bad cold, and I did get past it. But I don't like the control thing. I think it's more of the control thing and not being free and not being honest. And I don't believe our health systems, I won't get into a whole thing about this, but I just don't think our health systems and our people in charge have been honest with any of us on any of this stuff. And whether you're in Canada or whether you're here, the truth has still not come out. You know what I mean?
I totally agree with, I'm all for the truth coming out and integrity. And we as citizens, wherever we live, we do have to keep insisting on that and trying our best for that to happen.
Yeah.
There's a lot in this world that we need to kind of keep adding our 2 cents worth to change. And what I also think, Nancy, is, sometimes this is a Chinese proverb. You don't have to see eye to eye to stand shoulder to shoulder. So we don't have to agree on every single thing. We can partially agree, we can totally agree or disagree. And yet we can do it in a way that, we still support each other and care about each other and want the best for each other without the anger, without the violence.
Right. Exactly. Well, as we're talking about this, and I didn't get to say this at the beginning of the show, but I'm going to talk about it now because I want to know your thoughts, because I really respect your thoughts. You guys, let me just say, she's a dream expert. She's probably the best dream expert I've ever met. So we'll definitely give out your information real quick before I get into another subject. If people want to get with you, how do they find you, Stace?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Well, if you put in my name, Stase Michaels, into Google, you'll probably get to my website.
yeah.
And on my website, I do analyze a dream for free. I do that. I've done that for many years because I want people to experience what it is to actually see how a dream message really can make a difference in your life. So I do that. And if you look up my name, Stase Michaels, on Amazon, you'll find the whole list of my books. So website or on Amazon.
Yeah, it's Ace, it's Stase, and I call her Stace and it's Stasa, and I shouldn't do that.
That's
Michaels, Michaels.com. So if you want to check it out, you guys, that's how you can. And I'm sorry, Stasa, I always forget
You're
that.
perfect.
I just want to call you that. I don't know why. I just feel I should.
I'm happy with you.
You're great. Listen, I was going to read this today because of the stuff going on in Russia. And, you know, I have mixed feelings about this one too. I'll read what it says. These are the fast facts that they gave me from the New York Times. It says Russia invasion of Ukraine stretched into a 6-day on Tuesday. Satellite imagery showed a 40-mile Russian convoy menacing the Ukrainian capital. Peace talks between Ukrainian officials and officials in Belarus are set to continue after an inconclusive start on Monday. It also says that Russian troops are running out of gas. I really feel like we're not getting the true story on this one either. I'm concerned about the Ukrainian people, of course, but my feeling is that we're not getting the full picture on what's really happening over here. What's your feel? What's your take on it?
I'm not sure which part, is not. Which part is it that you want more, that you might think is hidden? I'm not sure which
I
part.
think, well, I've had different people on the show. You know, Maureen St. Germain was on last week and she said, Nancy, it's all just smoke and mirrors to distract us. I had a wonderful lady on yesterday, Celestine Starr, and she's kind of agreed with that and said that she felt like Biden had some property over there and it was more convoluted than anybody realizes, and that maybe Putin is trying to stop something. So my point is, and I intuitively feel like we're just not getting the straight shot on this, on what's really going on. Yes, the people are being, attacked, but what is the real deal here? And that's what I feel. So I just am curious if you feel that too.
I'll tell you what my true thoughts on this are.
Mhm.
I think that whether it's Putin in Russia or North Korea, I think that in the last 20 years, there's been kind of more of this kind of polarity between democracy and autocrats, like Xi in China. And there's wonderful things about each of these countries. I think the people of Russia, or the people of China, whatever, can be fabulous and wonderful, just like us. They want certain things in a normal life and a family and a home. But I think the leaders sometimes, in becoming autocrats, um, I do think that, from what I understand, that Putin has amassed a huge fortune that some people say is one of the richest people in the world, that are hidden monies. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but what is true that everyone agrees on is that he is an autocrat. Um, and the people in Russia have suffered because of that, because of him and his autocrat buddies who control most of the wealth, but very little of it trickles down to the average person who tends to suffer more. So I think sooner or later, whether it was this time with Biden and Putin and the Ukraine, or another time that would come up with, North Korea and Kim, or with China, sooner or later, this line in the sand was going to be drawn between democracy and autocracy
Dictatorship, really.
and
It's a
dictatorship.
dictatorship.
And
It truly
dictatorship.
is. But
Yeah,
but
yeah,
the people are always forgotten about. It's like you got
yes,
these guys
I
up here,
agree.
and then what about the
Totally
people?
agree. I
You
totally
know,
agree.
we've
And
got to
maybe,
get, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Stace.
yeah, maybe my point of view is a little bit influenced because I was actually born in a refugee camp
Oh, wow. Tell us where.
many years ago, many years ago. Because my parents were from Lithuania,
Okay.
and which is one of the Baltic countries now in NATO, where they're sending troops to make sure that nothing else happens there. And they were under the control of Russia and the dictatorship for 40 years. And I know what happened. I know historically that this is true in Lithuania, where my parents then managed to escape. They managed to escape, but under great duress and having to leave everything, literally starting with nothing.
Right.
But what happened when the Russians went in at that time, years back with my parents, was that, and they were just lucky, one of the last few to kind of manage to find a route that let them out, was the Russians looked to see who owned the land, who owned anything. And within the first year, 1/3 of the population was instantly lined up and killed. The land was stolen, businesses were stolen. And then in the next 30 and 40 years, uh, all the wealth of the country, whether, factories or whatever, was literally shipped out and stripped the country and the people. And that's what dictatorships do. They leave the people impoverished,
Right.
they take the wealth, and they make themselves wealthy, the people at the top, but not the people who live there. So I think because I had that, my sympathy, like yours, goes with the people of the country.
Right. How old were you? Can I ask?
I was simply
You
an
were
infant.
little.
I was just barely born, I think.
And then what about your parents? Where did they go? Did they go to Canada?
They did. They were very lucky that they were able to, after being in a refugee camp actually for several years, which is why I was born there.
Oh my
um,
gosh.
they were able then to get a safe passage into Canada. But people are still doing that. People are still trying to run away from many countries around the world that have dictatorships. Whether it's Syria or whether it's Russia.
Right.
And you think that you just get on a plane or a bus. Not necessarily. It's very hard to get out of those countries and to
People
start
don't want to take them in, is what you're saying. The border. Now, I've read or I've heard that they're opening borders over there so that some of the people can come through. I do this show. Gosh, now we're down. I'm kind of a down to the nitty gritty kind of girl. But, I do this show because I care about people
I do
and
too.
I care about humanity. And I look forward to the time where we care about each other and all this stuff is stopped and we just all live in harmony. And I believe that time is coming. I really do.
I do too. I do too. However, first we've got to clean up some stuff in this good earth, whether it's through politics. And I'm not sure politics is going to be the way that this world
No.
changes. I think it might be exactly what you're doing and what I'm trying to do too,
Right.
one person at a time, looking to our spiritual roots, looking to what really connects us as people. The fact that we might agree on a political question or two, who cares?
Right.
We're people who have the good of each other at heart.
Right. We all have hearts and souls. Yeah.
Exactly. And of our loved ones. And we want all that's best for each other.
Yeah. You know what I think, Stace? I'll tell you what I think. I think there should be a spiritual council.
Oh, I love that. I do love that, really.
I do too. And
yeah, I do.
Yes, that is who should rule, and it should be over, and that's what I believe. I believe it's spiritual people who have the people, all of humanity's, goodness at heart, not just the few.
A United Nations of spirituality. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we need to do. You and I can sit up there and we can say, okay, you guys.
Yeah, we wish. Well, in the meantime, we'll do our thing.
Steve, what's been going on with your dream work? I think so much of your dreams, all the stuff that you do. Anything new going on? You have anything coming up that you want to share with the audience before we get out of here today?
Well, by the end of the year, I'm hoping to put together, I have a new book that's kind of been, I have an outline for, and I have my ideas for that's hanging out in my head here.
Okay.
And it is a new book on dreams,
Okay.
but it's a different kind. Instead of telling you how to use your dreams, how to interpret a dream, which I have the 5 easy steps on my website or in my books. This one kind of talks about more of our spiritual journey and why dreams are important on that journey and how we use them on that spiritual journey. So it's kind of a little bit of a wider snatch than I've done before, but kind of feeling that it's time to do that.
It's time for it. Yeah, on the planet. And that's going to be coming out towards the end of the year.
I'm hoping. Yep.
Okay, cool. Hey, you guys, before we get out of here, I just want to say it's called Justice Plays Roulette. You need to check this out. It's by Stase Michaels. And if you guys want a psychic reading, an angel reading, go to my website, nancyyearout.com, and you can book your date and time. I'm pulling angel cards every day on TikTok, having so much fun. There's lots of people following me, and I'm really enjoying doing it. So check me out there. Stase, it was a pleasure. I'm so glad you came to visit today.
Likewise, Nancy. It's a true pleasure to know you.
God bless. Okay. Hey, we're going to get out of here for today, you guys. Everyone take care and God bless.
Connect the dots and keep the motion. Can achieve your goal. Let's hit the high road.
Hey, you guys, join me next week on The High Road for more stories filled with wisdom, love, and hope for our future. Have a fabulous week and know that by staying on the high road, you will make it to your destination. Visit my website, nancyyearout.com, where you can book a private session to learn how to tap into your own abilities. And check out my YouTube channel. It's Nancy Yearout's High Road to Humanity.
You can achieve your goal.